afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this virtual webinar on building a syllabus with CFR Education. I know many of you are in the process of wrapping up your spring semesters and planning out your summer research agendas. And I just want to say that I so appreciate your giving us this hour of your time to talk about CFR Education and the resources that we have to support your syllabus preparation for the summer and fall semesters. Some quick introductions. My name is Abigail, or Abby Meert, and I'm the Associate Director of Teaching and Learning here at CFR Education, the educational arm of the Council on Foreign Relations. Before joining CFR, I worked for 5 years as an assistant professor of history in Texas and in Michigan, where I taught graduate and undergraduate courses in African, American, and global history. I'm joined today by Dr. Eunice Kang. Dr. Kang is an assistant professor of political science and international relations at Vanguard University, where she teaches courses in American diplomacy, U.S. foreign diplomacy, and international relations. In addition to her role at Vanguard, Dr. Kang is also a board member of ISA West and a recent graduate of the CFR Education Higher Ambassador Program, a year-long program focused on teaching practices and pedagogies that champion global affairs education in colleges and universities across the United States. Our schedule today is a straightforward one. We'll begin with a brief discussion of the challenges instructors face when building a syllabus, as well as a discussion of how CFR education resources can help instructors surpass those obstacles. From there, we'll take a close look at 2 different syllabi. First, a sample Introduction to Global Affairs syllabus from CFR Education that highlights the range and widespread use or applicability of CFR education resources for the college classroom. Second, we'll dive into a U.S. foreign policy syllabus from Dr. Kang's own classroom that demonstrates practical ways to integrate mini simulations into a higher education classroom over the course of the semester. From there, we'll end our time together with a question and answer session in which everyone will have a chance to ask specific questions regarding the webinar. And I want to encourage you to feel free to submit any questions that you have for myself or Dr. Kang using the Q&A tool at the bottom of your screen. But before we get started, we thought it might be a good time to check in and ask, how prepared do you feel for the next semester? I'm watching the numbers roll, and I don't know if you all can see them, but I'll say that you all are very impressive. I'd be probably a 1 at this point. So
I think I'm probably a 3.
Eunice, you're about a 3. Oh, that's incredible. All right. Give it a few more seconds just if anybody else wants to answer the poll. But okay, well, let me say there is a real range of answers here. And as I suggested, I was always the one scrambling the night before the course webs opened, so I'm super impressed by how many people in this room are rating themselves somewhere between like a 3 all the way up to a 5, very prepared. And for the few of you who are sort of at the less prepared end of the spectrum, I really hope that this workshop will help you feel a bit more in control as you move forward towards the next semester. Oh, you can't, there we go, share results. So now you can all see. You all are very good. Well done. But we hope that this workshop will help you feel a bit more in control as you move forward with your planning. Now, we wanted to begin this webinar by speaking a bit about the challenges faculty face when it comes to syllabus preparation. I'm going to hand the mic over to Eunice now, whose own story will likely resonate with many of you.
All right. Oh my gosh, Abigail, thank you so much. Well, for that introduction and just like leading us through this talk today. Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about how the biggest challenge for me in building a syllabus are 2 things. Number 1 is finding the right textbook, and that's for me personally. And finding the right textbook is kind of like finding a good mate. You know, you need to find. I really I'm looking for that perfect textbook. And when you do find that perfect textbook, I find that I get a lot of joy from that because it shaves off so much time. Once I find that perfect textbook and it's at the right reading level, not too dense, it's clear, it's organized, and then it will help me organize the rest of my semester. And so for me, I know some of us here are maybe quarter system. I personally work in a semester system with 16 weeks. If I find that perfect textbook, then I'm able to structure my 16 weeks into 16 units based on the 16 chapters in the book. And if it's a really good book, even the chronology of the textbook, if it's like perfect, I don't even have to like say, oh, read chapter 8 first versus chapter 3, like it's in chronological order. So I think number one, for me, the challenge of building a syllabus is first finding a great textbook. And once I find that great textbook, like it's smooth sailing from there. And I think in finding a textbook, there's also other factors that I also consider too. If it's a great textbook, but it costs like over $100, then I do worry about my students actually purchasing the book. And so for me, I try to pick a book, and maybe it depending on where the students are coming from, maybe even $40 may be difficult, but I try to stick around maybe $40. I feel like a little bit better comparatively to like $100 book per se. Um, the second biggest challenge, I don't know if anyone else feels that way, but or finding an OER book. That's right, a no-cost textbook. But for me personally, when I've seen, it depends on the quality. I feel like sometimes is hit and miss. And there's some textbooks that I think undergrad, like a core class, maybe there are more OER courses because I see Misty in the chat. But sometimes in these higher division classes, maybe they don't have the OER textbooks yet. And then the second thing, the second challenge for me in building a really great syllabus is really creating meaningful assignments. And I think in the age of this generative I had students, I would ask a question, and in the classroom, some of the students would chat GPT their answers and read their answers to me from their laptop even, like just even asking, just throwing out a discussion question in class. So there is, I find that there sometimes is an over-reliance on AI, and finding a really, and creating what assignments that actually ask students to utilize their critical thinking skills and not relying on just in, asking AI or ChatGPT or whatever it is. I think that's something that I have to think twice about, or even three times, in creating an assignment that students will actually have some original analysis. I mean, I think that's where I think CFR mini simulations really come in really come in great handy, because those assignments that we do in person, it requires group work. And I'm really excited about talking more about the mini simulations because it's based on real life situations, scenarios, and it's experiential and it's tangible. And I find that it goes a long way than just reading off a textbook or just perhaps just only relying on traditional lecturing style. And those are my two.
Well, thank you, Eunice, for sharing. That's for sharing your experiences. And I just want to say, you said a couple times, maybe it's just me. I want to say that the issues you're outlining, affordability, accessibility, like activities that are, we'll call them AI proof, if such a thing exists. Those things are commonly shared. According to a national course materials survey in 2023, over half of students report that the cost of course materials has caused them to take either fewer classes or just not to take certain classes at all. Obviously, faculty are trying to, they know this, they're trying to get around it. A 2024 study showed that almost 2/3 of faculty members cited textbook affordability as a top concern in course design. But obviously, like Eunice, you mentioned, those concerns don't end there. Because even if faculty can find that sort of unicorn textbook, two questions remain. One is, will students do the reading? Or is the textbook language accessible and engaging enough that students will consistently complete the readings each week? But another question is, does the textbook match the instructor's aims or learning outcomes or anticipated narrative for the class? So speaking from my own experience, there are a ton of textbooks out there, but very few that have ever fully expressed the ideas or the relationships between those ideas that I've wanted to impart when teaching a course. I have to suspect that the same holds true for many of the people attending this webinar today. So the big question is, what does this mean for us? And I am pleased to say that CFR Education is poised, ready, and willing to help address these challenges through our vast catalog of free, accessible, expert-informed global affairs resources. So before I get to the how, let me give a little bit of explanation as to the what. So what is CFR Education? Well, CFR Education, the educational arm of the Council on Foreign Relations, strives to produce resources that teach students about the issues, forces, and actors that shape today's world. Our aim is to help students become globally literate so that students have the knowledge, skills, and perspectives they require to significantly and responsibly engage in their world. With advice from experts at the Council, the CFR Education team creates content on major themes in global affairs, from climate to sovereignty, and we do so in a way that makes complex issues accessible and understandable to today's students. Our offerings include over 700 free, nonpartisan multimedia teaching and learning resources. And again, I want to emphasize over 700 free resources for students. I know some people were asking about OERs. We're technically not an OER website, but we are open, we are educational, and we are free. So I'll make that play for us. But these resources include readings, videos, timelines, maps, charts, graphs, and more on a number of topics that align with general education and social science curricula. In addition to our readings and videos and timelines, CFR Education also offers over 60 different simulation scenarios of varying lengths that invite you and your students to step into the roles of decision makers in the U.S. National Security Council or the UN Security Council. And simulations, we believe that simulations help students develop critical thinking skills, persuasive speaking and writing skills, and collaboration skills while giving them hands-on experience grappling with the challenges associated with addressing today's most pressing global issues. And importantly, these simulations support the development of productive civil discourse in the classroom, something that students are in pretty desperate need of. Beyond providing students with the fundamentals of with resources on the fundamentals of global affairs and foreign policy, CFR Education also serves as a starting point for faculty when it comes to course design. We offer essay and discussion questions, classroom activities, sample syllabi, and more to help support you in the critical work that you do. We also offer webinars and events throughout the academic year to support your work. You all know this because you're attending one of those webinars today. And thank you again for being here. All right, but it's one thing to hear about our resources, and it's quite another thing to see how our resources and those of the broader council can work together to provide students with the foundational fact-based information they need to critically and responsibly engage with their world. On that note, we recently posted a CFR Education sample syllabus to our website for an imagined college course entitled Introduction to Global Affairs. And we're going to take a close look at the syllabus in just a moment, but let me talk you through it just a little bit first. So the syllabus is for a 15-week or semester-long college course broken into 3 units of approximately 4 to 5 weeks in length. Each week is themed around a specific global affairs topic, and we selected each topic based on a survey of leading global affairs textbooks, along with a survey of available higher education syllabi, to ensure that we were dividing up our resources in a logical, practical, and usable way. Using CFR Education resources as a baseline, we populated each week of the syllabus with a selection of our relevant, and again, free, readings, timelines, and videos, alongside supplementary resources and classroom activities available on our website that can be used to help students connect their own lives with the more theoretical aspects of their reading. So let's take a look. Let's go on a journey together. All right. So here on our website, we have the CFR Education semi-official, unofficial Intro to Global Affairs syllabus, and we have it as a PDF if you'd like to download it, but we also have it as an editable Google Doc linked on our website. So in creating this syllabus, we strove to maintain a traditional syllabus format. You'll notice there's a course description at the top of the page, which outlines the nature and goals of the course. From there, we provided learning outcomes at both the course and general education level. These are yours to select from, but we wanted to be clear with dividing out the learning outcomes that a global affairs education matters both for the semester and a student's life after college. Scrolling down, you'll see that we also provided a basic set of policies and procedures. These are inspired by a survey of civil dialogue research and pedagogical recommendations from civil dialogue institutes across the country. We included them here because I believe, at least, that much of a global affairs education involves the honest and willing exploration of diverse positions and perspectives. And I also think a global affairs education at its heart involves and promotes the willingness and ability of students to communicate across political and cultural divides. Now, if we were to dive down here into the weeks themselves, into the course schedules of topics and readings, you'll see that we've split out CFR's various offerings in 3 different ways. The first is CFR Education Resources, and these are those student-facing readings, videos, and timelines that I mentioned earlier. From there, we have CFR Supplementary Resources, which include articles, backgrounders, and videos that provide additional information on each week's topic. I want to note quickly that I have included only a sample of CFR supplementary resources each week. The Council has a very extensive library of resources, and one which I'd encourage everyone to consider perusing after the webinar. The last category of readings or resources that we have within each week are CFR Education classroom activities. And these include slide decks and instructions for a variety of different active learning exercises. But these activities also include our simulations and mini simulations, which again put students in the shoes of decision makers to explore possible policy recommendations to global affairs issues. So taking a quick look, how do these things work together? Well, let's scroll down. Take a look at global security. For a week, maybe a unit or a session on global security, I could easily see an instructor assigning CFR education readings for the first class session of the week to teach students about the foundational terms, actors, and strategies in the study of global security. So it might be that you assign your students a reading on, on interstate conflict, and we also have readings on intrastate conflict. From there, you might have students do that reading ahead of class for Monday or Tuesday, and then use the lecture to explore these key concepts around interstate or intrastate conflict. During the lecture that you have about those readings, about those foundational topics, you might also supplement that lecture with a short video about the balance of power. And all of our videos on our website are between, I'd say, 3 and 7 minutes long, which makes them pretty ideal to include in a PowerPoint or in a slide deck and present them to students and use them as a basis for class discussion. From there, you might decide, after introducing your students to those foundational terms, you might ask your students to go home and take a look at the CFR, at the Council's Global Conflict Checker. I'm not sure how many people have seen this or used this in their own classes, but this is a really fascinating interactive tool that the Council has built out to explore ongoing conflicts around the world. It provides the latest news. It provides an explanation of the historical context behind different conflicts. And so let's say you did that. Let's say on Tuesday, you talked through the foundational stuff. Then on Tuesday night and Wednesday night, you asked your students to explore this global conflict tracker. What you could then do is come back to class on Thursday and have students look at the rise and fall of the responsibility to protect. You could have students look into arms control and peacekeeping or humanitarian corridors, ceasefires, and pauses. But ask students to work individually or in small groups to formulate some kind of practical intervention plan for one of the conflicts that they looked at on that global conflict tracker. Another area in which I could easily, where it's really easy to see how these resources work together, might be migration here down in week 11. Again, it's easy to imagine assigning students CFR Education's introductory readings and videos on migration for the first class session of the week. And so we have really fundamental stuff. What is migration? Here, why do people migrate? Understanding why migration means different things. And I'll note that we also provide the transcript, and all of our videos are closed captioned for accessibility purposes. But you might choose to assign students some of those readings on what is migration, migration today, the different labels used in migration studies. You might also choose to end that class session with a collective viewing and discussion of a video, perhaps this one, on the lasting effects of emigration. Now from there, an instructor might assign students some of CFR's background readings that take a little bit more of a specific or honed focus on U.S. immigration policy and the U.S. refugee system, which in turn would set up the next class session of the week for an hour-long history-based simulation exercise. This one right here, Cuban immigration in 1980, which investigates whether or not the United States should welcome or discourage migration from Cuba in the wake of Cuban President Fidel Castro's 1980 decision to open the port of Mariel for immigration out of the country. And with these mini simulations, we provide an overview, quite a bit of explanation, and then we also provide decision points where students can debate or collaborate with one another to recommend a policy option to the US president for how the US government should respond. I want to make sure I leave enough time for Eunice to go ahead and speak. So I'll go back to our slides here. Bear with me, let me find my mouse. Before I conclude, I want to emphasize that we wrote this syllabus for you, college faculty, to use, modify, and adapt according to your own classroom needs. To that end, we've uploaded both a PDF of the syllabus to our website, but we've also edited an editable, what did I say? We also added an editable Google Doc version to the site as well. And this is truly probably the first and only time I will ever say this, but please, please feel free to steal this work. We want you to use this. We want to help you map out a plan for your semesters. Now with that, I'd like us to now turn our attention to Eunice Kang, again, Assistant Professor of Political Science and International Relations at Vanguard University, to take us into her own college classroom, where she utilizes CFR Education simulation exercises to encourage active learning, communication skills, and reflection amongst her students. Dr. Kang, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I just want to talk a bit about how I used CFR education, specifically the mini simulations. I'm going to talk about how I use the mini simulations in my U.S. foreign policy class, because it really did. I had a student who graduated this past semester, and she got into Northeastern Certificate for Global Studies. And she said that it was the US foreign policy mini simulations that she most enjoyed. She said this to me. I didn't even ask her. Like, she just came up to me, Professor, as I'm graduating, like it was those experiential real life things. And I should have said, well, thank Council of Foreign Relations Education, but I took all the credit actually, and I said, yeah, no, I didn't do that. But she said this was really great. So my favorite page, by the way, I'm going to drop in the chat, is actually this page on CFR's website, the mini simulations. So in my next slide, um, I used 7 or 8 different CFR mini simulations. So there's on the website that I just gave you, there's actually like over 40 mini simulations you can choose from. I read through almost all of them, and I chose the 7 or 8 that were most exciting, that I thought that would really get the students excited in the classroom, and that also aligned really well with the unit of the week. And so I did arms control, deterrence, economic sanctions, economic statecraft, intelligence, peacekeeping. and soft power. And by the way, I do have a goodie bag for everyone who's here, all 73 attendees that are here. I'm going to give everyone a copy of my US foreign policy syllabus, and it has hyperlinks directly to the CFR like mini simulation so that you can quickly print it out and utilize it for your class. And students can use it as a backgrounder. So everyone here will get one. Next, in my next slide, I'm going to share with you the basic format of how I executed these mini simulations. So I have a 1 hour class session. I had 16 students, so it was an upper division class. I basically printed out the mini simulation. So the example that I gave here is soft power. So I'm going to give you the actual link in the chat box of what that looks like on the CFR website. If you print it out, it runs over one page. So I do copy and paste it and put it in a Microsoft Doc Word and format it so it fits in one page. But you can see there that there is different sections: overview, the situation, decision point, and then there's three policy options, and each mini simulation has three policy options. I'm really thankful for this because there's not five, there's not two, every week, like it's just three, and it's three of the most important. I think it shows the range too of the different policy options that students can choose from. And then there's additional resources if people want to, that, the 700 resources that Abigail talked about, like it'll give you different readings or videos that relate to this particular topic. And the topic for today is soft power. And I'm sure everyone knows here that soft power is different from hard power, which is more economic and military power. But soft power is like the cultural power. It's kind of like K-pop. I'm Korean American, by the way. It's like the gravitational force of like K-pop and music and Hollywood and entertainment to draw people in. So we're talking about, soft power. So we actually, I could make the students, hey, read it on your own, but it doesn't take too much time. It takes 5 minutes. We actually read it together, and I give students a copy. I know I can save trees and, oh, just read it off, but I actually ask the students to annotate it, put circles around certain keywords, like, really interact with the paper. So we read through the situation, we read through the decision point. And when I read, I emphasize certain things. And then we'll read through the policy options. I'll tell a student, oh, can you read it for me? And then I'll pause real quick, and then I'll talk about it real quick. And we're able to read through the simulation in 5 minutes. And after we do that, I assign one president. And there's one president in the class of 16, and everyone else are National Security Council members. And National Security Council members are those who are advising the president in this role-playing exercise. And then I give each group, everyone, a chance to formulate the arguments, and maybe like 5-10 minutes to kind of formulate the arguments and to later present their arguments. And the basic format of the class is, after they present their arguments, the president, who hears all the arguments, three different options, will then pick a winning foreign policy to move forward. And the president will share that decision and why that person chose that decision. So in my next slide, let me just share with you that the goal and the role and the goals of the assignment is to consider, to remind students that they are, role-playing as a National Security Council member. The National Security Council member does advise and try to get the ear of the president, and their job is to persuade the president to choose their policy option. So they do have to be vocal. They do have to be poised. They do have to provide an argument. And the president's job is to listen, to ask questions, to interject questions. So when they're presenting, I give the president total authority. I give them, you have total authority. Go ahead and ask questions. You can cut people off, and you can ask follow-up questions as well, so that you can figure out which one is a winning option that you ultimately want. And how I do this in the next slide is I ask students to then go into 3 different corners. So in the classroom, in a rectangular classroom, I point to the 3 corners, and I say, okay, that's policy number 1. So for the soft power one, the first policy option is, the government shall devote a significant new funding for sweeping cultural, educational, and scientific programs. If you want that, go to that corner over there. Now point to the corner. If you want to maintain the current investment in soft power initiatives like media outlets and educational exchange programs, but not devote any new funds, not devote any additional funds, go over there. And then in this third corner right here, if you want to prioritize investment in hard power, and not cultural power, then you go to that section. And so what I am looking out for is that the students all don't migrate to one corner, that it is equally distributed. So for 16 students and one president, I say five people in each corner. And if there's already 5 people there, please go to a different corner. So some students I find they rush to the corner that they really want to go to. They'll like get up and some people will mosey on over to the corner that they want. And sometimes if I do this 7 or 8 times, some students they're with the same friends over and over again. And I say, okay, you can don't just go to with your friends. Sometimes I'll change it up. Sometimes I won't give them an option. I say, all January to March birthdays go over there. Summer birthdays go over there. Winter and fall babies birthdays go over there. And so sometimes I'll mix it up so that it's not the same people working together. It's not the same. Oh, you choose. But even learning how to argue against yourself. Maybe they vehemently disagree with that policy option, but they're assigned that role. And so they still have to figure out a way to argue for that role, even if they disagree with it. So I point to 3 corners. They go to a different corner. I hand out a white flashcard, blank flashcard, and I say, okay, you talk about, formulate your top 3 arguments and write it down. So have a recorder. And then, so that's the recorder. And then I say, choose one speaker who will then present your argument to the president. So I give them a couple minutes and to go ahead and do that. So you can see that diagram of the students walking to the different corners. And in my next slide, the group chooses one person to be the speaker, and then they have an opening statement. Maybe they'll say, these are our arguments, but then the president can also say, and I do coach the president and say, well, President, now you facilitate. Now I step back completely at this point, and I let the president know and say, President, don't forget to, before class, say, oh, okay, so group 1 presented, then we'll hear any rebuttals. And so the other group 2 and 3 will like rebut the arguments of the first group. And then that initial group will then try to argue, provide counter arguments to those rebuttals. So we'll do that depending on the time. We'll make sure that it's evenly divided. And then we'll go through then group 2 policy option and then foreign policy number 3. So each group will have a chance to present, hear rebuttals, and then provide a counter argument. And once all 3 groups have presented, at the very end, I always leave 3 to 4 minutes at least, at the very least. Then the president will choose one foreign policy option, and that's the winning foreign policy. And it's so funny, like once the president just does choose a winning foreign policy option, the people, they cheer. They're like, yay, we won. Like some of the students, I mean, they're college students, but they get really into it. There's cheering. There's like yeses, and then some people are like boo, like because they lost. But really, it is really exciting, and some of the arguments do really get heated. And depending on how I'm feeling, sometimes I let the arguments play out and I try not to interject. I really say, well, president, like if the president is looking at me, I'm like, well, I look back at the president and go, well, what are you going to do? Like lead, you're the president. So I really do hand off, the reins over it, but I do provide a lot of instruction. And after the first time, there's a learning curve for that first time. By the second and third time, and definitely by the 7th and 8th time, they get it. They know exactly what to do. And then the president will share why they chose that winning policy. They don't just say, I chose number 2. In the end, no, like I chose number 2 because of X, Y, and Z. One thing that I do is, what do I do while this is going on? Well, I record students' names for class participation points. So I find that if I don't incentivize it and I don't put it in the grade as part of their grading, then they're not going to speak up. Like I really do have to incentivize it. So I outlined 10% or 15% for class participation. This is separate from their attendance. And if you are president for that week, then they get full 10 points. If they are the speaker representing their group members' arguments, then they also get full points. If they don't speak, but they're shy or they choose not to, be vocal on that particular day, they will still get points, 8 points, which is like a B range. Then they'll still get credit for being there, being part of the, formulating the arguments in that group work. But you have to you have to participate in the rebuttals or counter arguments. That's when other group members can also participate too, to get like that 9 or a 10 points. So I do make sure I put it in the syllabus and I make it an intentional part of the grading. Otherwise, I find that students may just, sometimes like just take a second, like a laid back posture to this. And my next slide. So this is how I grade the cost participation. 10 points is mastery, 9 points is excellent, so it's still 90%. 8 points is proficient, 7 points is sufficient, and 6 and below needs improvement. So, but if you're a president, if you're a speaker, you get full points. If you are part of the rebuttal, or depending on how active you are in the rebuttal or providing counter arguments, you can get 9, 10 points. But I do grade each CFR mini simulation exercise. And then my next slide. Usually, let's say on a Monday, I do the lecture. On a Wednesday, I do the simulation. And then on a Friday, I ask for a debriefing report. So basically, it is asking the students to reflect on the exercise and to provide a written response to what they learned. And so these are some sample questions that I used. So the first question is, for NSC members, write down which policy option you are assigned to, write down your group members' names, and then that's for 2 points. And then write down the 3 main arguments for your assigned policy option. If you write all 3, you get 3 points. And then if you were the president, because not all, because there's only one president, but if you were the president, which policy option would you have chosen out of the 3? Because everyone heard all the arguments. Which one would you have chosen based on the class arguments and why? So that's 2.5 points. And then the final question is about the topic, which was in this case, soft power. What did you learn about soft power? Be specific and demonstrate some reflection on this topic. So it's open-ended, and I definitely write in instructions. Do not use AI. I want your personal reflections. I want to hear your voice. There's no right or wrong answers. I want to hear from you directly. So that's a really fun, just debriefing report where the students get to think about, again, like what they learned and turn that in on Friday. I wanted to share with you some of the answers that the students shared in the debriefing report that shows that they actually learned, that they enjoyed this material, that they appreciate the value of these real life based scenarios and simulations. I did change the names of the students for privacy issues. So, but let's go through some of the answers that they wrote. So in the next one, I asked, what were your 3 main arguments for soft power? And then this is a student wrote, and I like what this person wrote. Let's say Hannah wrote this from in the bold. She wrote, investing in soft power will not only bolster our image overseas, but will also stir up patriotic sentiment domestically in the time where we are very politically divided. Further, the US does not need any more military bases around the world. We are still the most powerful military machine that has ever existed in history. So you can see that she believes in soft power, especially through this exercise. Next slide, please. Another question was, if you were the president, which policy option would you have chosen out of the 3? This person wrote, if I were the president, I still would have chosen my policy option. Look at these students like really doubling down on their own policy option. The US is already in a place of dominance, military speaking, with bases around the world. We're in no shortage of any further troop deployments. What would really strengthen our position militarily even more is the prestige that comes with soft power. Countries around the world are more apt to take us seriously if we have diplomacy and the image to back up our power on the global stage. So I thought that was really interesting. Next one. What did this teach you about soft power? What did this mini simulation, CFR mini simulation, teach you about soft power? And this writing in, this person wrote, I learned that we really need more soft power. We are advanced military power, but our image is more important, is what this person says. Because with good soft power, you have the ability to win a war before a shot is fired by playing neutral countries, as well as if geopolitical competition was a game of cards. So they're able to gather more and more neutral and smaller countries to their side. The balance of power in regards to strategic competition with other rival countries would shift to our favor. So this person is seeing the value and the potential of soft power. Next slide, please. So yes, one of the key takeaways that I hope that you can see from my presentation is that these mini simulations are really great, and it can be done in one class session. It can be done, and I wrote 1 hour, but it was actually 50 minutes. And I know that that seems really short, and it really is. So I don't waste a single second. And I do have to make sure every minute counts, but it is possible. And to be honest, I would run 1 or 2 minutes late, but the students were happy to stay behind a little bit, and then I would let them off and they would run to the next class. But yes, it is possible to do in one class session. If you want to connect with me, please, yeah, you can explore my mini simulation. I mean, you can explore my syllabus. And I do have a copy. Let me put that in the chat right now. You can click on, there's a link and then you can click on that. And there it is right there. And actually this also inspired me to write my own mini simulations, and I wrote my own simulation. So thank you CFR for like really inspiring me. It got my own creative juices going. And I wrote one on drones, and if the US should invest more in drones and effects of drone warfare in the war with Ukraine and Russia. I read an article and I was like, oh my gosh, I feel really inspired. Maybe that day I just had tons of energy and I wrote a simulation on drones. So yeah, maybe I'll share that with you if you guys want it or something at a later point. But yes, I even did that as well. I think that's it with me. Thank you so much. If you want to connect with me, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm really active there. You can email me, and I'd be open to any questions that you may have.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Eunice, it is so fascinating to me all the time to hear about the ways in which faculty make these simulations work in their classrooms. So thank you so much for sharing the use of corners to do a simulation, because I think a lot of people, myself included, really do struggle with this like idea of how do we do something so big in such a short amount of time. So again, thank you so much for sharing. All right, so we're going to open the floor now for our questions and answer session. Again, I want to encourage everyone to drop your questions and answers using the Q&A tool that's located down at the bottom of your screen. But I think we can go ahead and get started. So, Eunice, I'm going to throw you the first question if that's all right. This question asks, Dr. Kang, what does your prep look like for the mini sims? How
Mhm.
much background readings on the topic do you give your students, and how much time do you spend so that students have enough background information to make compelling arguments for one of the three policy options? Thank you.
I am happy to share that it didn't require too much prep work, and I think that's a good way. But also, my background is in international relations, so I do have like a working knowledge of some of these broad topics. So for soft power, obviously this is a concept that we talk a lot about as an IR, researcher, a scholar. But honestly, that overview and all the components that I shared with you that we read together in class, that's enough to get a good discussion going. And the foreign policy options, if you take a look at it, so if you take a look at the different three policy options, there's actually a little bit more information, a short blurb with a little bit more explanation, like a paragraph, and that's enough information for the students to start thinking about and formulating some arguments. And they can also use their phones, their laptops at this point to also do extra light research. And I could have given the reading, the mini simulation, oh, read it beforehand. I could have done that, but honestly, I would just print it out and bring it to class, make 16 copies, and we would just read it together. And it's our first time reading it, and I feel like as though that was fresh and was easy, and that also worked really well for me. And by the way, I forgot to mention that I also gave a flashcard to the president. So the president is also writing down all the arguments that each of the different three groups are formulating, the arguments that they're formulating.
I love that idea because it also forces the president to do some active listening of their own. So everybody is equally engaged in this process. All right, I have a question here that says, I teach the American History Survey at a community college, and I want to find a non-research way of getting my students to interact with materials that put America's actions within a global perspective. This would be in addition to their American history materials. Any ideas? So many ideas, and the key word, if you haven't guessed it, is going to be mini simulations. And right, and our longer and our, traditional extended length simulations. And I'll quickly say our mini simulations are generally, as Dr. King emphasized, they're really for a single class session. Then we have extended simulations, and those are maybe 2 to 3 class sessions. So again, varying lengths. And our library is a bit more expansive for mini simulations. But for mini simulations, I'm sort of looking at our website right now. We have many mini simulations for American history. We have a mini simulation on the Oregon boundary dispute of, I think, the 1840s, maybe 1848. We have a mini simulation on the explosion of the USS Maine. We also have a mini simulation on the Zimmermann telegram in 1917 asking, should the United States take action against Germany? And then our mini simulations, that library, it goes all the way up to the present day. And we are actively working on building out not only our library of contemporary history readings and student-facing resources, but we're also working currently at building out mini simulations that deal with history. So keep an eye on our site, but I would really encourage you to think about incorporating some mini simulations into your classroom. I have another question here, and this one is a bit of an well, Eunice, let me ask you this. Have
Mhm.
you ever tried using a mini simulation in an online asynchronous course?
I have not.
No, but I just thought, I'd throw it out there
But
and
I
see.
can see how it could work because you could do breakout sessions. If you do 3 different breakout sessions and the president remains in the main room with the instructor, or the president can also drop in to the breakout sessions. But I think it's very possible if you're adept in using the Zoom, all the features, I think it would work really well.
Absolutely. Oh, I can see that as well. And I'll say, even for the asynchronous classroom space, it's not something that I've done, but it is something that I know many faculty have done, particularly some of the faculty that I've met through our Higher Education Ambassador program. But they will have students. They'll use discussion boards to have students enact the debates. I've met one faculty member who worked with his institution's instructional design team on an asynchronous course, but where, the discussion boards, I think answers would pop up at different times based on which phase of the simulation the students were taking part in. So maybe during one week, it would be an initial, everybody would give their initial thoughts. But then you'd have to wait until the second week, and then the board would populate with everyone's thoughts, and then students would have to sort of link ideas together into more cohesive arguments. So there are definitely ways to make it work. I do think one of the strengths of our mini simulations is just how flexible they are. And so all different ways to use them. Um, I see another question here. Are there any mini simulations that are not for US policy making decisions? The answer is yes. Eunice, have you ever used any of our non-US?
I have not. Saw that question in the chat box and I was like, oh, all the ones that I've ever used were the scenario where it was a president and the National Security Council. So those are the only ones that I've ever used and I've encountered.
And I'll say that makes perfect sense because most of our mini simulations are for the National Security Council. But we do have mini simulations for the United Nations Security Council, and we also offer extended length simulations for the United Nations Security Council. So we have simulations on the dispute between India and Pakistan over Kashmir. We have simulations on Boko Haram in Nigeria, looking at that from a UN Security Council perspective. And we also have simulations that are focused on NATO and decision making within NATO. And I'll say again, I don't want to tip my hat too much, but we are working at expanding our library so that we can keep offering simulations that explore decision-making processes within other governing bodies. So we're working on it and we are really excited about it. And I see someone has suggested, the European Union. um, or ASEAN. That's all on our list. So we are working at it. It's just slowly by slowly, but we'll get there. Are there any additional questions that we can ask or that we can answer for you while we're here?
While we look at maybe any other last questions, I do want to respond to Victoria and Leslie, who said, "Yeah, please share the drone one," and to thank everyone, all 62 people who have stayed and persevered to the very end. I want to share my drone simulation that I created just for fun, since there were some people who asked for it. So here you go. I'll drop that in the chat box. And that one I made earlier this year because I read Defense Primer. It was published by, I guess, Congressional, Research Service in January 2025, and I was inspired by that, and I created this. And actually, the inspiration comes from having utilized so many of CFR's mini simulations. I just did it in a very similar format, but it's definitely not as polished as CFR's, but it was my first stab at it. So there you go.
Goodness, that's an incredible resource to share. Thank you so much. And just know that even our mini simulations often start as sort of scribbled out Google Docs. And it takes truly a village to make these things. So, but I think like, thank you so much for sharing that with our participants today. And I see a comment from Desi that says, my students also like the what if questions that help with counterfactuals and current events. So yeah, thank you, Desi, for sharing. And I do see a few requests for slides, and I want to let you all know we will be sharing the slides after this webinar ends. So those will absolutely be coming to you. Right. Any other questions before we wrap up? A few seconds to get those last minute thoughts typed out. Misty, it says you're having trouble seeing the links that Eunice posted. Um, Let me check with my team, but if we'll try to get those links to you after the webinar. All right. Well, everyone, thank you so, so much for joining us today. Thank you for giving us this bit of your time, particularly at the start of your summer breaks. We really appreciate it. Thank you for engaging with us. And I just want to encourage you, I think many of you are signed up for our newsletter, but if you're not, please do go ahead and sign up for our newsletter, but also think about following us. We have a Facebook account, CFR Education. We have an X or Twitter account, CFR_education. And we also have a YouTube channel where we post all of our videos. And then last but not least, if you're ever wondering, I have this class, I want to do something different. What does CFR Education have to help me? Please feel free to email us at that CFR_education@cfr.org email address. It's my job as Associate Director of Teaching and Learning to help you uh, incorporate our material. So if there's a way that I can do that, if there's a way that I can help you workshop a syllabus, or if you have ideas for our team, we'd love to hear them. So please don't ever be afraid of reaching out and making suggestions or asking questions. All right. Well, thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Good luck. Have great summers. Good luck with in the fall.
Thank you.